This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Podcast. Thrilled today to be joined by Jessica Jackley. Jessica is a managing director at Untapped Capital. She's going to tell us about Untapped Capital, about herself, and a little bit more. Jessica, can you do me a favor and introduce yourself and tell us about Untapped Capital?
I'm happy to do that. Thanks for having me. So my name is Jessica Jackley. I'm an entrepreneur and investor, and over the last 20-ish years, most of my work has been focused on creating entities that stand for, promote, social justice, financial inclusion, and champion the sharing economy. My first startup was a nonprofit, Kiva.org. It's one of the few kind of nonprofit unicorns that grew up pretty quickly. It's about $1.5 billion in loans facilitated so far. And then since then, I've done a bunch of other for-profit, nonprofit stuff. But the newest two things that I'm doing, one is Untapped Capital, and the other is working on, we just actually shipped our first boxes 2 weeks ago, but at Altruists, we create volunteer activities for kids in a subscription box. So Untapped Capital and Altruists are my two babies of the moment.
Just magnificent. And talk about the motivation to start these things, to grow these things. Where does that drive and motivation come from? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've evolved and these have evolved.
Yeah, I grew up in a wonderful, loving home and community. We all, I was part of a sleepy old Presbyterian church that talked a lot about how to basically be a person of service, be somebody who gave back in the world. And it might sound naive and silly, but as a kid, I thought, well, this is my mission, this is my calling, this is what I'm supposed to go do. The fun and the challenge over the years was figuring out how to do that in a way that felt as smart as possible, as efficient as possible. I guess as, not just jumping into any old sort of initiative as a really passionate kind of bleeding heart, but also trying to figure out how to be strategic and move people and resources and inspire and, kind of rally the troops in a way that led to movements and, permanent change, and permanent structural change, not just kind of putting a Band-Aid on problems. So the first, I can make this a long answer or a short answer. I'll pause. That's my short answer. But it just
fantastic.
To what it means to kind of exist in the world.
Yeah, no, we're always thrilled to hear about people's journey and how they got there and what makes them tick. And so we appreciate it very, very much. And talk about, this year. What are you most excited about this year? Where's your focus? Where's your energy? What are you most focused on this year?
Yeah, well, so I feel really lucky to have started Untapped Capital with my partner, Yohei Nakajima. We basically, our sweet spot, we invest 100 to 250K checks into startups based in the U.S. mostly. We raise, we have a small fund that is directed at this. I love the thesis, and Yohei, it's really Yohei's vision, and I just feel super fortunate to get to work with him. But basically, we find entrepreneurs as early as possible. Often, Yohei is the first person that ever reaches out to an entrepreneur in terms of a first investor or potential investor. So we get in as early as we can, not just because that is better for our bottom line, but because then we have the most possible leverage and opportunities to have a great relationship with founders and to help be available to them, to, if they're under networked, really amplify what they're doing and connect them to the people and resources that they need, and on and on. We love being there from the very beginning. And while we are not, we talk about impact a lot, but we're not, in air quotes here, impact investors. We understand the reality that every business has an impact, good, bad, or ugly. And that if you're not having conversations about that, you're asleep at the wheel, and you're going to miss out on the broadest possible understanding of risk and opportunity in your space and in what you're building. So, I think it's funny. I've been introduced before, and I've had bios before that say social entrepreneur, and at this point, it's like I think everyone needs to think of themselves as a social entrepreneur. I think those lines are blurring so much because it's not a nice, good for you kind of opt-in set of questions anymore. You're not just being kind and generous in the world when you're asking.
Right. That's exactly right. And if you're not doing something right, are helping, you can't, I mean, aside from everything else at the very base level, you can't attract a team and a staff and leadership to make things work. So somehow or another, you've got to be engaged in a very positive way in the world, or you can't engage a team and make that all work if you want great people. And Jessica, talk about, you've had, general partner of Untapped Capital, you've raised a fund, you also teach at USC's business school. Talk for a moment first about, you raised a fund, and what's it like to have a committed capital fund? Do you feel pressure to put that money to work? How does that feel to have a committed capital fund?
It feels amazing. It's really exciting. I've been a part of funds in the past, but I've never been through the process from start to finish, like actually funding and recruiting, I guess, LPs. I feel really lucky to have the support of so many different people. And, pressure is not necessarily the word that I feel. In fact, we see so much good stuff. We're always like raising and knowing kind of where we want to go with that pretty instantly. It's not like it sits around much at all for us. So we have a pretty amazing deal flow. And the thing about how Yohei and I work is that Yohei is really he's the genius behind how we kind of track and tag and just keep track of everything. So the funnel that we have might look a lot different than other funds because he'll see so much, follow up on the ones that look promising, and basically like keeps track of, we still keep track of so much. He's already maxing out his Airtable. It's really funny. Like he'll use technology till he'll max it out like more than anybody else I've ever met. So what I feel is not pressure, but more just a sense of excitement and opportunity to get to do this. And I totally appreciate that you're listing some of the other pieces that I do. I don't know if this is anywhere that you want to go with this conversation, but one of the other pieces I just want to put out there because I'm proud of it and because I think it's not kind of brought out into the light a lot. There are a lot of people that work in this way and manage a fund while doing other things. And to me, it really, it's symbiotic, right? Every piece of my work helps the other pieces. So as we kicked off the conversation saying, I'm an entrepreneur and an investor, I can't imagine, I know that this is a reality for so many people and I respect and applaud them. I can't imagine having never built things and investing in the way that I feel is a responsible way to invest. I'm grateful that I have had that perspective. It's an overused cliche, both sides of the table, but I'm really grateful that I've gone back and forth quite a bit over the last 2 decades.
Well, it's fascinating, right? I mean, it gives you a different perspective entirely. You could sit in the shoes of the entrepreneur and understand where that person is coming from in a lot better way. Yeah. Since you've built things yourself, you really do. And it's not that there's one way to build things. I mean, the challenge, of course, with many of us that are entrepreneurs is we get fixated in our one way of doing things, and we need to open our mind to see there's other ways as well. And that can be a challenge too. I find that to be my own personal challenge. I see I've done it this, and that way. And then when I, sometimes it's harder for me to contextualize different ways of doing things. And of course, as I learn and grow, I get a better sense of that. But those could be challenges. But having those different perspectives, I think, is so healthy and so interesting. But you couldn't do it if you ever decided to get to the spot where you want to have a $1 billion fund or a $5 billion fund.
Totally. No, and that's we're in it for the long game. So that's the long-term vision.
Yeah. And at that point, it'd be harder to flip back and forth. You'd really have to be full-time in deploying capital and managing it because it just is a full-time business as you're writing bigger checks and bigger
100%.
Risks and leverage 100%. And stuff like that. But what a fascinating career.
Yeah.
Tell us one thing, Jessica, that I've not asked you that I should have asked you about, whether related to Stanford Graduate School or teaching at USC or anything that's of interest to you. Talk to our audience about one thing that I should have asked you about but didn't.
Oh, well, I have 4 kids and I learn a lot. I know it's one of these other things, talk about cliches, my kids inspire me. I learn so much from my kids. I actually just didn't get that before I had my own. And I truthfully feel like they're just such, they're such sources of joy and creativity and inspiration for me. Among all the experiences that I have in my life, I'm really grateful it's my favorite one. And I'm grateful to get to be a parent. I really think it's like serious business, the business of parenting. And, you can do it with excellence, just like any other thing. So I put a lot of energy and heart and time, of course, into those 4 tiny people, and it makes me better. And I couldn't be more thankful for that aspect of my life.
Well, but the point is well taken. The business of parenting, being a parent, is a serious job. And if you're going to be a parent, while one is excelling professionally, what I try and tell my kids is there's a period of life where there's only so many priorities you could have. You could be good in business and good with my kids, but I can't then be having, dad's night out all the time. You can't sort of do all of it. You have to, there's a period of time where you're focused on being a great parent and being a great business person and, maybe taking care of yourself, very importantly, physically and mentally, but there's only some things you could do. But it is a priority, and it's a magnificent way to sort of manage and look at it as though I'm an entrepreneur, have a fund, and I take care of my kids. I mean, or I'm being a great parent to my children.
Those are things I do. I don't have a lot of other pieces on that list right now, but that's it.
Yeah, and as the kids get older, there's more room to evolve into other hobbies and other kinds of things like that. Obviously, 4 can be daunting at times, and we understand fully. But but what a great challenge, what a great perspective. I'm so glad that you gave that perspective, Jessica. Jessica Jackley from Untapped Capital and Altruist. What a pleasure to visit with you. Thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you.